Hello everyone, welcome back to PN&L channel where we create content with practical IT solutions. If our videos are helpful to you, kindly subscribe to this channel, click the thumbs up button and let us know in the comment section what you would like to see. In this video, we will install and configure Openstack Placement API. Openstack Placement is a REST API. It the REST API, which stands for Representational State Transfer API, and it is used to build web services that allow clients and server applications to exchange data. So OpenStack placement is an example of a REST API, and it uses data model to track resource provider inventories and usages along with different classes of resources. For example, a resource provider can be a compute node, a shared storage, uh, an IP allocation pool. The placement service tracks the inventory and usage of each of these providers. So, for example, the compute nodes, shared storage pool, and IP allocation pool. The placement service, for instance, on a compute node, maybe a consumer of resources such as RAM and CPU from a compute node resource provider, disk from an external shared storage pool resource provider, and IP addresses um, from an external IP pool resource provider, which is an example of the function of the placement service in OpenStack. So without further ado, let us jump right in and begin the installation of the placement service in OpenStack. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the database entry for the placement. Where is my database? Right here, Chef OSD. So this is my database here, my SQL. So we're going to create the database and grant permission to each one of the tables. So this is what we're going to use. So we create the database, we grant privileges to the placement user identified by a particular password. We flush privileges and exit. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the placement service, that is the service user that is going to be used to connect to the database and perform certain backend stuff. So we're going to create that on the first controller. Okay, so that is done. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the placement user to a service project and give it admin privileges. So we're going to add that. So there is no output for that because we're just adding roles. So the next thing is we're going to create a placement API service entity on controller 1. Most of this configuration will be done on controller 1 so that we won't have duplicate entry in the database. So we're going to create the service, and that is the output. The next thing we're going to create a placement API service endpoints, just like we created service endpoints for Glance. We're going to create this service endpoint for subsequent services that we're going to be creating, like for example on Nova, which is for the compute services, and also Neutron, which is the networking service. And also, if you're going to be using some other features like telemetry, you'll have to use you have to create what's it called a you have to create service endpoints. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create the service endpoints as mentioned earlier. So we're going to use this command to create the endpoint, and this endpoint uses different ports. Like for example, the placements will be using we were using port 8778, as we can see right here, and we're going to be creating the public, internal, and admin endpoints as we have created in the previous service that we created, which is the glance image. So we press enter. Okay. Okay, that is done. The next step is we're going to install the placement service on all the controller nodes. So we're going to use the apt install placement API, which is this here. Enter. Okay, that the other two controllers are complete. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create directories for the certificates that we created, because all the services must be encrypted. Well, the communication between the client and the server must be encrypted. So we're going to create this directory and copy the respective keys and certificate into the respective directories. We're going to do that on all the controllers. Okay, looks like we have a we're going to also move the certificates. Alright, that is complete. So next we're going to configure the placement.conf file. So we're going to comment out the SQLite database because we're going to be using our custom database. So first we're going to comment that out, and then we're going to configure the authentication strategy to be Keystone, because we're using Keystone for authentication. So to see placement.conf file, let me check 209, and that is correct. So we to configure the same on all the controller nodes. So next we will configure the authentication URL. Check 256. Okay, that is correct. So we configure it on all the rest of the controller node. Next we configure the auth URL. Okay, that's correct. So next we're going to add the certificate file location, and in the placement.conf file we check 301, and that is correct. Next we configure the key file location for the key file. It's correct. Then the next step is to add the CA file, that's the certificate authority file. Okay, that is correct. The next step is to add the memcache servers, or the memcached servers, which is used to okay, so the memcache server is configured correctly on there. Next we're going to configure a set of parameters such as the authentication type, project domain, user domain, and username and passwords as well. So we're going to use one, configure this on one full sweep. So if we go to 403, as you can see, we've configured the project domain, user domain, and the username and password, which is correct. Then we head up to controller 1 and do the same. So next what we're going to do is we're going to configure the database backend connection, since we commented out the SQLite previously. So we're going to use this command, mysql blah 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 placement and the username and password for the database backend. Okay, so that is correct. We did the same for the rest of the controllers. So all the configuration for the placement.conf file is complete. So what we're going to do is we're now going to populate the database. So we can check the database to see if all is good. So use placement show tables. Okay, that is good. See that the tables are populated in the database. So next we're now going to configure the web interface. As we mentioned earlier, placement uses REST API, and which uses HTTP or HTTPS to communicate with the rest of the services. So what we're going to do is we're going to configure Apache. So each one of these is different because I'm using these shortcuts to create this placement-api.conf to add the configuration in there. So the IP addresses for each one of the controller nodes is going to be different. So as you can see here, this is 120 for controller 1 and 120 for controller 121 for controller 2. And 122 for controller 3. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to add the certificate location for the website. So what we're going to do is I need to double check something first. Okay, so we're going to add the certificate location, which is there, and we do the same for all the other controllers. Save and exit. All right, so next we're going to restart all the services, the Apache service and all the other service that we have configured. So I'm going to stop and restart them. So what we're going to try to do is to test okay, so this shows that we're able to get the status and the current links and to Well, basically just to prove that the placement API is configured correctly. So that comes to the end of this video on how to install and configure placement REST API, which uses a REST API. I hope this video is informative for you. I hope to see you in the next video. Please click the thumbs up button, click the subscribe button to encourage us. Thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you.